Got me thinking about how much more foolproof can we make our systems to improve the communication between us and the trades, because this is certainly not the first time there has been a miscommunication. And so I thought I'd do an episode, because obviously we have adjusted our process in order to prevent this from happening. And so I thought I would just talk through some of the ways that you can make your communication clearer with your trades.
You're listening to the She Renovates podcast. You're listening to She Renovates, the podcast for women who want to renovate to create an income and a life they love.
Hello, renovators. So today's episode has come out of a minor disaster that happened on our reno while we're away. So, as I've mentioned before, doing renovations remotely, not my strong suit. But while we're away, we asked our tiler on our renovation at home to complete the grouting so that when we got back, we could get the plumber in and get them fitted off. So it was fine with two of the bathrooms, but the third one was problematic. So basically the floors are a chocolate brown terrazzo with black and bits of cream in it. And the walls are these 100 by 100 gloss chocolate tiles. They're lovely. And because they're 100 by 100, there's a lot of grout, and the grout was to be a terracotta colour. So we're sort of making a feature of them. So there is one wall that will be painted in that room that will also be terracotta. So we ordered the grout, couldn't get it in before we left. So we organised for him to pick up the order, our tiler to pick up the order, and that was that. Anyhow, when we got back, we discovered that he had mixed up the colours, and he had tiled the floor in the terracotta and the walls in a pale brown. When I saw it, I was devastated, but you get over these things. And so when we talked to him about it, of course, the first thing he said is, I'm not giving you a discount. That's why we were, wanting to talk to him about it. And, when you've spent that much money on your bathrooms, it's not about the discount, it's about getting the job you want. And so he said that he could change the floor tile. So he was able to, I'm guessing he saw cut or ground out the grout and replaced it, but he couldn't change the wall. And which, as time's gone on, I've realised is not a disaster. The walls actually look fine. I think if I wasn't going to have the terracotta, I probably would have gone for white rather than a brown to make it pop, but the long and the short of it, it's fine. And so, but the fact that the terracotta has been taken out of the floor is really great because it looked terrible. And so it got me thinking about how much more foolproof can we make our systems to improve the communication between us and the trades, because this is certainly not the first time there has been a miscommunication. And so I thought I'd do an episode, because obviously we have adjusted our process in order to prevent this from happening. And so I thought I would just talk through some of the ways that you can make your communication clearer with your trades. So for me, I'm not a great communicator, I know that, and I tend to be in my head and think that I've told people things when I haven't. And so for me, it's really a lot about written communication. Of course, that does become a tiny bit problematic if you are working with people that have English as a second language. But I guess I want to share with you some of the things that we have in our existing system and what we've added to try and prevent this from happening again. I take my hat off to renovators who can renovate remotely successfully, because I have found time and time again that you really do have to be able to live with things not happening how you wanted them, because in your absence, trades will just do what they think or cut corners. I'm sorry, it is reality. So you have to really be okay with that, because often the cost of fixing it is just not an option. As with our bathroom wall, if we had have wanted to insist on that grout being changed, it meant retiling the walls. And these tiles were $160 a square metre. And so we would have been living with the cost of removing them, the disposal of them, and then purchasing the new ones and starting again. Obviously, we wouldn't pay the tiler to retile, but I doubt that we would be able to get him to pay for the actual tiles. So, yeah, anyhow. So here we are. So when I traced over our communication with our tiler beforehand, what I realised is that there were messages everywhere. So we were texting, we were WhatsApping, we were emailing. And I think that's the first mistake. You really do need to have one channel of communication so that it's easy to, if someone wants to go back and check what the instructions were, that they can do that without a lot of, chasing around. If you have to look through 2 or 3 channels, it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it just won't work. And so I think that's the first thing to do, to nominate how you're going to communicate with that particular trade and stick to it. So, if the trade then starts to send you emails, you just send them back a message and say, we only communicate via WhatsApp, or whatever it is that you've decided to do. The second part of that is, I believe it's a really good idea to have a project WhatsApp chat. So for all the trades and the people that are working on your project, if you have a group communication in a single WhatsApp channel, I think that helps on a couple of levels. One, so that everyone is on the same page and they are kept up to date with what's going on in terms of the progress of the job, so that they're able to, be aware of when they're due to be there, and also they're seeing the stuff that's happening if there are issues that are arising that may affect them. So the next thing is that I think that the easiest way to keep clear communication is to have a single source of truth in terms of the job. And what I mean by that is to have one document per trade where you communicate all the details about their work with them, and that document doesn't, it remains the go-to place for getting information about the job. So, for instance, this is something that I've added to our processes. So, as well as our scopes of work and our trade notes, we've added a document that's like a spec sheet, which includes, what we've ordered. So I put images and links to the products we've ordered, and also any notes about how it's to be laid or installed and so on. So that if you keep that as a single source of truth, if something changes, you just have to make sure that you update the document. And that way you can just send a message and say, this has been updated on the document. And then you always have the latest decisions reflected in your documentation. So I have mine in Google Docs. And the reason being is because everyone can edit them. So if the trade wants to make a comment about something you've written, they can do that. And I personally think it makes it much easier to transfer information and keep it updated at all times, because a lot of the confusion on projects happens when a decision gets changed. Like we might decide that we're doing white grout on the tiles and then come along and your architect says, no, I think you should do terracotta. And so if you go to the document and change it, when the tiler's thinking about what colour goes where, all he has to do is go and look at that and know that it's up to date. So they're the first three measures. Incidentally, I have created a format, like a template for that document. If you would like a copy of that, let me know. I'd be happy to share it with you. So the next thing is to also, and this is really around problems with language, to make sure you've got a visual representation of your whatever the information you're trying to convey is, as well as written. And what I mean by this is include your mood boards, include, like I put photos in my specs of what it is that I want and how I want it done. So, you know, things like the tile layout. So showing the tiler how it's to be laid out. I've had this problem twice where we have same tiler. He's a good tiler, that's why we persevere, but communication's another level. Where I've had beautiful marble tiles and I've wanted them laid checkerboard, laid it out, shown the tiler how you want it. Do you understand? Yes. Gone off, come back, it's not, you know. And once they're laid, there's nothing you can do about it. So I figure if you put a visual diagram of how it's to be laid, then reduce the risk of mistakes. So the next thing that I think is really important is making sure that you document everything. Do not leave anything to verbal conversations. It's fine to reinforce it verbally, but make sure that it's written down in that source document so that there's no risk of confusion. The next thing is to include your program with your documentation. So that's your schedule when things are to be happening. Okay, item number 6 is around program. Trades are like us in that they're always juggling the work that they've committed to with what they're doing at the time, and all projects chop and change, and so it's a bit of a moving feast. And so for that reason, it's really important that you keep your trades updated in terms of the program so that they can adjust as they go as well. Because while you might say to a trade, we're going to start the rough in on this day, you know, very frequently that just doesn't happen. So you need to have a bit of flexibility. So these days I do my program in 2 stages. I do 2 separate ones. One is one to get us to the start date, so the approval, the design and approval phase, and then the second one from the start date moving through the project. I just find this is much easier to manage because, you know, writing a program when you haven't got a start date is quite, you know, it's a bit nebulous, I guess. And so I just find that works really well. Also, I guess the next step is keeping the program attached to that little package of documents that you give to your trades. Enables them to be able to see, you know, where their piece of the puzzle is, and keeping that program updated, which is something that I am not very good at. And I think that that's a really important piece of the puzzle and something I'm going to work better, you know, work harder at. And then of course, reporting on how you're going on program into that WhatsApp chat. Even if trades don't respond, they are probably monitoring it and watching it, and it's just a really good, low invasive, non-invasive way of letting them know where you're at. Of course, you know, when it's getting close to the time that they need to start, you obviously need to call, but in the meantime, just updates on the WhatsApp channel is very important. The next thing is pick up defects early, okay? So and this is another thing that's really hard if you're not on site, if you're doing a job remotely. Like if I'm not there, it might be 2 or 3 weeks before I get to site, and then I find that a trade that was there a month ago, they've got a defect in their work and it needs to be fixed. But if you can pick up defects early and get them rectified while the trade's there and while they're still doing the job, it is much easier and much less disruption to everyone than waiting until they've left and then it becomes, a problem. Number 7 is really around spending time with the trade, getting across the detail of their work. If someone has been, doing a certain type of work, whether it's, while we're on the topic of tiling, let's talk about tiling. You really want to spend some time each familiarising yourselves with one another's point of view. And that can be things like sharing things that have gone wrong in the past for you, or that trade telling you how you can make it easier for them to work. So asking them, what do they need? How can I make your job easier? I think is a really good way to start a project or a section of work because that sort of fosters a mutual respect and a sense of cooperation that never goes astray. Number 9, the best thing to do, the best way to look after your trades is pay them on time. That is 101. You cannot expect performance from trades if they're having to sing for their money. And I can't express that enough. Of course, you need to protect yourself financially. So if the job is not completed satisfactorily, you may need to withhold some funds. But on the whole, all things being equal, you want to make sure that you pay your trades on time. And the last point is to make sure that you debrief with the trade when their portion of work is complete. This is, was it not Napoleon Hill who said the unexamined life is not worth living? It's a bit the same with a project. The unexamined project is not worth doing because there's so much learning in a project, and just by doing a debrief about what went well, what didn't go so well, what you could do better, if you do that at a trade level, that will really help to refine your processes. So have you got a tradie tale, either good or gruesome? I'd love you to share it. If you could DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or write me a review with your best reno story, I would really love to hear it. And if you would like a checklist of these 10 points from this episode, plus a copy of one of my trade spec templates, let me know. We'll include a download link on this page on our website. So that's it from me today. See you next week.
This is the She Renovates podcast. To discover how to harness the power of renovating, check out theschoolofrenovating.com.